high-ceiling study of Aldridge Estate, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the polished floor. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that pressed in on him, demanding attention he did not want to give. A year had passed since his father's death, and though the estate was filled with luxury and inherited wealth, it felt hollow. He had inherited the family tech company, inherited the responsibilities, and most painfully, inherited the silence. It wasn't just the absence of his father that weighed on him. It was the inability to fill the spaces around him with people who understood him, people he could speak to without fear of judgment. His sister Tessa had called that morning, practically shouting through the phone. "Elias, you have to bring a date to my wedding. You can't show up alone again. Mother will never forgive you, and frankly, neither will I." Elias pressed the phone to his ear, listening to the background laughter and chatter of Tessa's bustling world. He had nothing to say. The truth was, he didn't know how to interact with people. He could manage board meetings, sign contracts, and negotiate acquisitions, but simple conversation with women felt like a foreign language. His mother, Vivian, elegant as ever in her flowing cream dress for a luncheon, had added her insistence during breakfast. "Elias, I know it's asking a lot, but the family will notice if you come alone. It isn't just about appearances. It's about you. You deserve happiness. Happiness." The word felt foreign, even absurd. Elias had tried in small ways to insert himself into social situations, but they always ended the same. Forced smiles, awkward silences, and a deepening sense of isolation. That afternoon, he walked down the grand staircase, past marble columns and silent halls, and found Jonah Hale, his childhood friend, waiting in the library. Jonah had grown into a therapist over the years, his presence calm and direct. He studied Elias with his usual perceptiveness. "You need to stop hiding behind silence," Jonah said. "You're a brilliant man, Elias, but the world doesn't see it if you refuse to participate. Come to Tessa's wedding with someone unexpected, someone real." Elias frowned. "Unexpected? Real?" "Yes, someone who doesn't care about your name, your wealth, or the legacy your father left. Someone who will make you human for a day." The words lingered in Elias's mind long after Jonah left. He wandered through the estate's kitchen and paused by the open window, staring at the sea beyond the cliffs. That was when he saw her. Mara Ellis, the house cleaner, moving gracefully between counters, humming a tune he didn't recognize. She was efficient, warm, and entirely herself. There was an ease about her that he envied and secretly admired. He cleared his throat. "Mara," he said. She looked up, eyebrows raised, hands paused mid-wipe. "Yes, Mr. Rowan. I want to ask you something unusual," he said, his voice awkward even to his own ears. "Would you accompany me to my sister's wedding as my date?" Mara blinked. She thought he was joking. "Excuse me?" "I said, be my date, just for one night. You'd help me survive the event." She laughed, sharp and incredulous. "Are you serious? You want me, the maid, to go to a high society wedding as your date?" "Yes." His eyes met hers. He wasn't joking. "I know it's unconventional. I know it's..." He trailed off, unsure how to articulate the rest. "No, but I need someone genuine. Someone real. I can't do this alone." Mara's laughter softened, replaced by a cautious curiosity. She studied him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected. Vulnerability. Elias Rowan, the aloof, untouchable billionaire, seemed utterly human at that moment. She tilted her head. "And you think I'd say yes?" "I hope you would," he said, his voice almost a whisper. The decision wasn't easy for Mara. She worried about the whispers from guests, the judgment, and the discomfort of standing out in a world far removed from her own. Yet there was a sincerity in Elias that called to her instinctively, a need she felt she could meet without asking for anything in return. She nodded slowly. "All right, I'll do it, but only because I like a good challenge." The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind. Mara prepared herself quietly, choosing a silver blue gown that complemented her skin tone, elegant without being ostentatious. She wore her hair simply, her natural beauty evident without artifice. Elias, on the other hand, was a bundle of nerves. He hadn't considered how it would feel to be in a crowd with her at his side, how the closeness might stir feelings he had long suppressed. The wedding day arrived, and Mara's presence turned heads. Guests whispered compliments, noting her grace and composure. Elias felt a strange comfort, a calmness that had eluded him his entire adult life. When she smiled at him across the room, he realized he was seeing someone who made the empty spaces of the estate feel warm. During the first dance, Mara guided him with a gentle hand, encouraging him to relax. His usual stiffness melted, and he allowed himself to be led by the music, by her. For the first time, he smiled without restraint, and the sensation was intoxicating. He noticed the way she laughed at a passing comment, the tilt of her head as she followed the melody, the soft exhale of her breath as they swayed. It was simple, yet it changed him. The night ended quietly. Elias found himself lying awake in his bedroom, the scent of Mara's perfume lingering in the air. He thought of the way her presence had filled the room, how her laughter had echoed in corners of his heart he had thought unreachable. There was a stirring he didn't understand, a curiosity and longing intertwined. He knew with a sudden clarity that nothing in his life would feel the same after this night. The following morning, the estate hummed with the usual activity, but there was an unspoken change. Elias watched Mara move through the rooms with her effortless grace. He lingered in the kitchen under the pretense of checking his schedule, waiting for her to notice him. "You're quiet today," Mara said, handing him a cup of coffee. I'm not used to this," Elias admitted, taking it with shaking hands. "Not used to feeling anything." Mara studied him for a moment, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's all right," she said softly. "Some things take time." Later, an accident brought them unexpectedly close. Mara tripped over a rug and spilled coffee over Elias's documents. He stiffened at first, ready to scold, but then the corner of his mouth twitched. A laugh escaped him, awkward and surprising even to himself. Mara chuckled, brushing off her embarrassment. They laughed together, the sound bridging the distance that had always existed between them. That evening, a storm swept over Ravenshore, and a power outage plunged the estate into darkness. Mara lit candles and brought tea into the library. They sat close together, the flickering light painting their faces in shades of amber. In the quiet, Elias spoke about his father, his isolation, his fear of connecting with people. Mara listened, sharing fragments of her own life, her family, her struggles, the quiet strength she had cultivated to navigate a world that often dismissed her. Their hands brushed accidentally. Neither pulled away. It was tentative, fleeting, but it carried weight. Elias realized as he looked at her that he had never been this exposed to another human being, never felt such a combination of safety and longing. Mara's presence was a revelation, a warmth that had been absent in the cold halls of Aldridge Estate. The storm raged outside, but inside, two lives began to shift imperceptibly, moving toward a connection neither could yet define. Elias found himself lingering in the hallways more than usual, not because he needed to check on the estate or manage staff, but because Mara's presence pulled at him in ways he hadn't expected. Every casual smile she gave, every small, effortless gesture made him feel alive in a manner he hadn't felt in years. Yet he remained awkward, unsure how to cross the invisible line between employer and something far more intimate. Mara noticed his glances, subtle but persistent. She caught him staring once while he thought she wasn't looking. Instead of feeling uncomfortable, she smiled softly and said, "You're staring again, Elias." Caught off guard, he stammered, I wasn't." "You were," she interrupted gently, a playful twinkle in her eyes. "It's all right. I'm used to being watched. Most people don't notice the small things." Her words, casual yet precise, struck something deep inside him. Most people hadn't seen him at all. Mara, however, seemed to look straight into the parts he tried to hide. Days passed, and their interactions became less formal. Elias started inviting Mara to join him for late-night tea, or to help him choose which documents needed attention. Mara obliged, laughing softly at his clumsy attempts at small talk. She asked about his childhood, his favorite memories, and listened when he spoke in hesitant fragments. Slowly, he began sharing things he had never voiced to anyone. The pressure of carrying his father's legacy, the isolation of wealth, the loneliness that wrapped around him like fog. One afternoon, Mara accidentally knocked over a stack of contracts while dusting his desk. Papers scattered across the floor, and she bent to pick them up, embarrassed. Elias rushed to help, and as they crouched side by side, their hands brushed. Neither moved away. Their eyes met, and a quiet understanding passed between them, a shared recognition of vulnerability. "You're full of surprises, Elias Rowan," Mara said quietly, standing and offering him a faint, teasing smile. "Oh, I don't think anyone would ever call me surprising," he admitted, his voice low. "Most people, they see the exterior and assume they understand." Mara shook her head gently. "They never understand anyone fully. Only the ones willing to show themselves, flaws and all." The storm came suddenly one evening, sending heavy rain beating against the estate's wide windows. The lights flickered and then went out, plunging the mansion into darkness. Mara lit a few candles, carrying them to the library where Elias had retreated. She placed them carefully on the table, the soft glow casting warm reflections on their faces. "I could make tea," she suggested, moving to the kitchen. "I'd like that," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. They sat together with steaming cups in hand, the rain hammering the roof and the walls separating them from the outside world. Conversation was tentative at first, but soon they found themselves talking about the parts of their lives no one else knew. Mara spoke of her family in Dublin, the challenges of being a Black woman navigating spaces that often ignored or underestimated her. Elias listened, captivated by her strength and clarity, feeling a connection deeper than any he had experienced before. Then it was his turn. He spoke in fragments, haltingly at first, then more freely, as the warmth of her presence encouraged him. He told her about his father, about the weight of the family empire, and the crushing loneliness that had followed his inheritance. He admitted he feared intimacy because he didn't know how to navigate it, and that people often recoiled from the quiet depths inside him. Mara listened without judgment, simply holding the space for him, making him feel safe. The hours passed unnoticed until the rain lessened. Elias realized how close they were sitting, the air thick with tension, neither dared to acknowledge. Their hands brushed again, this time lingering. A small spark of electricity ran through both of them. Mara looked up at him, eyes wide but calm, and for a moment, the barriers between them vanished. The following morning, life resumed its usual rhythm, but something had shifted. Tessa returned from a brief trip, noticing the subtle change in her brother. "You look different," she said, a teasing grin spreading across her face. "Is it her?" Elias's ears burned, but he said nothing, unsure if he wanted to acknowledge what had taken root. Mara, for her part, carried herself with an easy grace, aware of the new dynamics, but unwilling to let herself overstep. Later that week, Elias played a soft tune on the estate's old piano. Mara wandered into the room, drawn by the music. She began to hum along, her voice weaving into the melody. For a fleeting moment, they existed in a world of sound where only the notes and their mutual presence mattered. Neither spoke, yet their hearts communicated everything their words could not. Despite the warmth, Mara wrestled with her growing feelings. She knew the divide between them was more than social. It was vast, invisible, and insidious. She worried that any deeper attachment would end in disappointment, that she might become a casualty of expectations, judgment, and differences in their worlds. One evening, she decided she needed space, hoping distance might quell the undeniable pull she felt toward Elias. Elias, sensing her withdrawal, felt a profound emptiness he hadn't anticipated. The mansion, usually alive with routine, seemed heavier, colder. He couldn't sleep that night, replaying every glance, every touch, every shared laugh. He realized he had grown accustomed to her presence in a way that went far beyond casual companionship. The thought of losing it left a hollow ache in his chest. The next day, Vivian noticed the tension, reading her son with the intuition only a mother could possess. "Elias," she said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder, "you can't let fear keep you from what matters. Love doesn't come twice. If you want her, you have to take the risk." He nodded silently, a storm of conflicting thoughts raging inside him. That evening, he found Mara in the greenhouse, tending to the roses that flourished despite the cloudy weather. The sight of her there, calm and radiant in the fading light, gave him courage he hadn't known he possessed. "Mara," he said softly, drawing her attention. She looked up, a questioning expression on her face. I need to tell you something," he continued, struggling to find the words. "I've spent my life avoiding risk, avoiding intimacy, avoiding everything that makes me human. But with you, I can't pretend anymore. I don't know how to do this perfectly. I only know that I want you here. Always." Mara's eyes widened, emotion flickering across her face. She opened her mouth to speak, then paused, gathering herself. "Elias, I feel the same. I've tried to tell myself to step back, to remain professional, but I can't deny it. I care about you, more than I should perhaps, but I can't pretend I don't." He took a cautious step closer. "It doesn't matter what we should feel. What matters is what we do with it. I'm asking you to trust me, Mara. Trust us." For a long moment, they simply stood there, breathing the same air, hearts beating in sync. Then slowly, tentatively, their lips met in a soft, exploratory kiss. It was gentle, full of uncertainty and promise, a kiss that spoke more than words ever could. The roses surrounding them seemed to lean in closer, their fragrance thick in the air, marking the beginning of something fragile and powerful. In that quiet moment, the boundaries that had once separated them, wealth, status, background, blurred into insignificance. The kiss ended, and they pulled apart just enough to look at each other. Mara's eyes shimmered, her lips curved in a tentative smile. "I don't know what comes next," she admitted. Elias took her hand, entwining their fingers. "Neither do I, but we'll find out, together." After that evening in the greenhouse, the mansion seemed different. Not the walls, not the furniture, not the vast, empty corridors, but Elias and Mara's perception of it. Each room felt warmer, each corner softer. Mara moved through the estate with ease, her presence no longer simply tolerated, but quietly cherished. Elias found himself seeking her out in moments that had once been dull or lonely, inventing reasons to linger in the kitchen, the library, or by the piano, just to catch a glimpse of her smile or hear her voice. Tessa returned from a brief trip and immediately noticed the change in her brother. "You're glowing," she said during breakfast, teasing him as she reached for her coffee. "Who's the culprit?" Elias stammered, looking anywhere but at Mara, who stood by the counter, pretending to sort laundry. Mara caught his flustered glance and raised an eyebrow, a small, private smile playing on her lips. She knew what he wasn't ready to admit publicly. Even Vivian, ever perceptive, noticed. "Elias," she said later that day as he passed by her study, "you're no longer hiding behind your silence. I hope that means you're learning to let someone in." He nodded, grateful for her observation, but unsure how to articulate the surge of feelings he hadn't expected. Mara, in turn, seemed to sense the shift without him having to say a word. Their connection deepened in quiet moments, shared laughter while cooking, subtle touches when passing each other in the halls, lingering glances across candlelit rooms. One morning, Mara found herself humming while folding linens. Elias, who had been standing in the doorway watching her, cleared his throat. "You make even folding laundry sound pleasant," he said, his awkwardness softened by genuine warmth. Mara laughed, a clear, melodic sound that filled the room. "I aim to make chores sound poetic. It's a gift." Despite the teasing, both felt the tension of unspoken emotion. Mara wrestled with the social divide between them, aware that any deeper attachment carried complications she hadn't anticipated. Elias, meanwhile, became increasingly aware of his emotional dependence on her presence. The quiet comfort she brought was intoxicating, a lifeline in a life previously filled with silence. One afternoon, as Elias worked on a company presentation in the study, Mara entered carrying a tray with coffee and pastries. She tripped slightly on the rug, sending coffee spilling over a stack of important documents. She gasped, horrified. Elias rushed over instinctively. "It's all right," he said quickly, laughing softly despite the mess. "Really, it's fine." Their hands brushed as they cleaned up together. Neither pulled away. For the first time, Elias felt a thrill in that closeness, a sensation both terrifying and exhilarating. Mara looked at him, a faint blush on her cheeks. "You're different when you're not angry," she teased lightly. "I'm not usually not angry," he admitted with a small, reluctant smile. Their shared laughter broke the tension between them, forging an intimacy neither had anticipated. It was a turning point, subtle but undeniable. Later that week, a storm swept through Ravenshore, bringing heavy rain and a sudden power outage. Candles flickered across the estate's high ceilings as Mara prepared tea in the dim light. She carried it carefully to the library where Elias waited, reading by the soft glow of a single lamp. "Tea," she said, placing the tray on the table. "Strong enough to keep you awake, but not so strong it'll make you jittery." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "Perfect," he said simply, and for a moment, neither spoke. Words were unnecessary. The comfort of their proximity spoke volumes. As the storm raged outside, they shared fragments of their pasts, confessions they had never shared with anyone else. Mara spoke of her family in Dublin, the challenges of being a Black woman navigating spaces that often overlooked her. Elias listened intently, captivated by her strength and insight, feeling a connection deeper than any he had ever experienced. When he spoke of his father, his loneliness, and his fear of intimacy, Mara didn't recoil or pity him. She simply listened, her presence steady and grounding. Their hands met again, lightly at first, then with a hesitant hold. Elias realized how starved he had been for this human connection, this warmth that Mara seemed to radiate effortlessly. The days that followed were punctuated by small, meaningful moments. Mara helping him choose the right outfit for a dinner with board members, laughing at his awkward attempts at humor, gently correcting his posture when he stood stiffly at the piano. Each interaction drew them closer, though both were painfully aware of the social divide between them. One evening, Tessa returned from a short getaway and immediately sensed the energy between her brother and Mara. "So," she said with a teasing grin, "is this why you've been so different?" Elias blushed, looking down. Mara's presence beside him was steady, reassuring. She gave a small smile but said nothing, letting him navigate the moment. Later, Elias invited Mara to the music room. He played the piano softly, a melody he remembered from his childhood. Mara hummed along, her voice intertwining with the notes, creating a moment of quiet intimacy. Neither spoke, but the harmony between them was palpable. It was a small, simple act, yet it conveyed everything words could not. Despite the growing bond, Mara's doubts persisted. She worried about what people would think, the potential heartbreak, the vast differences in their worlds. She decided to maintain distance, believing that professional boundaries would protect both of them from inevitable complications. Elias noticed her restraint and felt a hollow ache. The mansion, once filled with routine, seemed heavier, emptier without her warmth. He spent restless nights replaying their moments together, realizing he had grown reliant on the comfort she provided. The thought of losing it was unbearable. Vivian, observing her son's turmoil, approached him gently. "Elias," she said, "you can't let fear control your heart. If you love her, you must act. Waiting will only make the pain worse." That evening, Elias found Mara in the greenhouse tending to roses. The fading sunlight caught her silhouette, and the sight struck him with an urgency he hadn't known before. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Mara," he said softly. She looked up, eyes wary yet curious. "I need to tell you something," he continued, the words catching in his throat. "I've spent too long hiding. I've avoided connection, intimacy, everything that makes life real." But with you, I can't hide anymore. I don't know how to do this perfectly, but I want you in my life. Always. Mara's eyes filled with emotion, a mixture of fear and longing. Elias, I've tried to step back. I thought it was safer, but I can't deny it. I care about you more than I should. He took a cautious step closer. It doesn't matter what we should feel. What matters is what we choose to do. Trust me. For a long moment, the greenhouse was silent except for the soft rustling of leaves. Then slowly their lips met. The kiss was soft, exploratory, tentative, a collision of two hearts long starved for connection. As they pulled apart, Mara whispered, I don't know what comes next. Neither do I, Elias replied, holding her hand. But we'll figure it out, together. The days after their first kiss felt unreal to both of them. Soft, tentative shifts in routine that carried the weight of something quietly life-changing. Elias walked through the estate with a calm warmth that the staff noticed immediately. Mara moved through the halls with slightly more caution, aware of the delicate balance between her job and the new emotion threading itself between them. Yet every time their eyes met, a small, undeniable spark passed between them. Vivian was the first to notice. Mothers always knew. She watched Elias one afternoon as he arranged files for an upcoming board meeting. His movements were lighter, less stiff. He didn't flinch at casual conversation the way he normally did. When Mara entered the room with tea, the subtle shift in his expression, the softening, the barely there smile, told Vivian everything. When Mara stepped out, Vivian approached her son. Elias, she said gently, you're in love. He froze, that familiar panic rising. Mother, I don't know what I'm doing. You're doing what your heart has begged for years, she replied, squeezing his hand. Don't sabotage it. He nodded, relieved by her blessing. It was more support than he dared hope for. Tessa returned 2 days later, bursting through the doors with her usual whirlwind energy. She took one look at her brother and grinned. Something happened, and don't try to lie, your face is too soft for that. Elias rolled his eyes, but the faint blush gave him away. Tessa squealed in triumph, already guessing. She stormed off to find Mara, cornering her near the staircase. So, Tessa said dramatically, arms crossed, you and my brother are something. Mara froze, mortified. Tessa, I didn't mean to cross any lines. Cross lines? Tessa scoffed. Mara, I've seen my brother stare at wallpaper more lovingly than any date he's ever brought home. If you've managed to get him to actually feel something, then thank God. Mara laughed, tension breaking. Tessa pulled her into a gentle hug. Just take care of him. The man falls apart if someone breathes too loudly. Their shared laughter echoed through the hall in a way that made the mansion feel alive. With the family's acceptance easing the weight between them, Elias felt confident enough to ask Mara to join him for dinner. Proper dinner. Not in the kitchen or hallway, but a quiet, candlelit meal in the East dining room. When she arrived, wearing a simple but elegant black dress, Elias stood so abruptly he almost knocked over a wine glass. You look beautiful, he said, voice soft but steady. She smiled. You look nervous. Terrified, he admitted. They sat, talked, and laughed. Really laughed. Elias was awkward at times, stumbling over stories from his childhood or corporate board mishaps. But Mara found his imperfections endearing. He loved listening to her talk about Dublin, her mother's incredible cooking, her dreams of returning to school one day. After dinner, they took a quiet walk through the garden. The roses glowed faintly under the lantern lights. Mara stopped to inhale the scent of a pale yellow bloom, her fingers brushing a petal. You know, Elias said, these roses used to feel like the only beautiful thing in this house. And now, she asked softly. He looked at her with a depth he rarely showed anyone. Now you do. Mara felt the words settle deep inside her, unexpected, sincere, overwhelming. Their lives began to intertwine, slowly at first, then all at once. Elias invited her to accompany him to small gatherings. Not society galas or crowded events, but quiet dinners with friends, charity meetings, and personal outings where he needed emotional steadiness. His colleagues noticed the change immediately. Elias was more relaxed, more engaged. He cracked the occasional dry joke, surprising everyone, including himself. One evening, after returning from a dinner with a group of close business partners, Elias held Mara's hand gently as they walked through the entrance hall. "You made tonight bearable," he told her. "You're doing that on your own," she replied. He shook his head. "I'm only doing it because you're there." She touched his cheek lightly, something she'd never dared before. "You underestimate yourself too much." He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly. "I'm learning." Their bond grew through small rituals, morning coffee made together, late-night conversations in the library, quiet piano sessions where Mara rested her head on his shoulder as he played. The mansion became less of a monument and more of a home. But not everyone was pleased. A few members of Elias's extended family, those who prided themselves on lineage and reputation, whispered about the inappropriateness of the relationship. Some attempted to dissuade Vivian privately. Vivian responded with cold precision. "My son has chosen happiness. If that offends you, your invitation to this house is permanently revoked." The matter ended there. Still, Mara struggled with doubt. She worried about being an outsider, about what people would say, about the inevitable microscope placed on anyone close to the Ravenshore name. One evening, she sat alone in the greenhouse, staring at her hands, lost in thought. Elias found her there, concern tightening his chest. "Mara," he said gently. She looked up, eyes clouded. "I don't know if I belong here." He knelt beside her, taking her hands firmly. "You belong here because you belong with me." Her eyes softened, but she still hesitated. "There's so much attention, so many expectations. I don't care about any of that," he said. "I only care about us." She exhaled shakily. "I'm afraid of losing myself. Or losing you." "You won't lose either," he whispered. "Not if we face everything together." She leaned into him, letting him hold her. The moment cemented something between them, an understanding that they were choosing each other fully, despite the differences in their worlds. Months passed, and their relationship deepened into something mature, steady, and undeniable. Mara was no longer just part of the staff. She was part of Elias's life in every meaningful way. Vivian and Tessa adored her, often pulling her into family dinners and weekend outings. One evening, Elias planned a quiet dinner under the rose arbor. Lanterns glowed softly, the night air warm. Mara wore a flowing emerald dress that caught the light beautifully. Elias barely touched his meal. He kept glancing at her, fidgeting with something in his pocket. After dessert, he stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. "Hey, no, Mara," he said, reaching for her hand. "There's something I've wanted to ask you for months." She looked up, suddenly breathless. Elias lowered himself to one knee. Mara gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "I never expected you to walk into my life the way you did," he said, voice trembling. "I never expected you to change it, but you did. You made it warmer, fuller, real. You made me someone I'm proud to be, and I want to spend the rest of my life loving you the way you've loved me. Mara Alvarez, will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes, overflowing before she could speak. She nodded, once, twice, then whispered, "Yes, yes, Elias, of course." He stood, pulling her into his arms as lanterns flickered above them, casting golden light over the moment they chose each other forever.